The Forum 2, exclusively on YouTube Live, weekdays from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. We tackle the tough issues: political, social, cultural, and racial. It may not be what you expect to hear, but we will definitely give you what you need to know. Check out our website, theforum2.com. Call in live, 414-395-0484. Check us out. Good morning. Welcome to the program. Today is Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. We're rounding the corner here, guys, and we're approaching better than 35 million people in the country that have already voted in this election. A couple of things going on. The Supreme Court nomination is being advanced toward confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett, even though Democrats on the committee wanted to use the tactic to try and slow down the process. It's not going to work. Democrats want you to know that they don't want her to be the next justice of the Supreme Court. So there's going to be a variety of things that Democrats are going to say they're going to do or attempt procedural things, but she's going to ultimately get the confirmation. But something in particular that is bothering me, that probably will trouble you as well about this election. So we do know there's going to be influence in this election, and that some of the safeguards that are there to protect our elections are weak. Not only are they weak, when we saw how vulnerable our elections are to foreign influence, whether it's actual, tampering with vote totals, which hasn't been proven nor disproven, or sowing disinformation, because we know that disinformation can have a profound effect on people's attitudes and behaviors. Just look at the conspiracies of QAnon as an example. And that is a group that is gaining traction and momentum. And it's some of the most tin hat, outlandish, outrageous sci-fi movie nonsense that I've ever heard of in my life. And there are real people that actually believe in some of those wacky theories. Wacky, I'm being diplomatic when I say that. But because there is this vulnerability, and we're going to talk about the Trump campaign and how they raised something like $1.5 billion between the Donald Trump campaign and the Republican National Committee. They were flush with cash for this election, because that's one thing the Republicans can do. They can raise an awful lot of money for their political efforts. They're able to secure justices. They can view the Constitution in a very myopic way like they do, and that's one thing they can do to protect their power. They also can raise an almost unlimited amount of money for the purposes of running campaigns. The Donald Trump campaign is almost broke. In fact, they have been pulling ads in battleground states because they don't have the money to compete. And depending upon when you're watching television in the Milwaukee market, the Joe Biden commercials, at least on television, I mean, there's digital commercials that are running when you go to, your favorite website or YouTube videos that you'll play. You'll see a Biden commercial that are playing. But in the Milwaukee market, the Biden television commercials are running like 3-1 to Trump, his commercials. And the pathway to victory does include Wisconsin. Now, remember, Donald Trump needs Florida. If he doesn't get Florida, I don't want to say it's virtually impossible, but it's exceedingly difficult if where the polls are leaning, if any of that comes to fruition. And so that being said, the Trump campaign doesn't have the resources to compete. I don't think they have a policy agenda, because really at no one point in time did Donald Trump say, hey, here's what I'm going to do for you in my next term. Here's how we're going to tackle healthcare. Here's what we're going to do for paycheck protection. Here's what we're going to do for taxes. Here's what we're going to do for. He didn't give any policy issues, because I don't think he cares, because this next term for him is about keeping him out of jail and making sure he has the immunity to not get prosecuted, but also the statute of limitations will run out probably 2021, 2022 on the most egregious offense that he committed, and that was obstruction of justice. So if he gets reelected, then the opportunities to prosecute him diminish dramatically. So he's in it for different reasons, not for you, not for me, not to do anything about the pandemic, none of that. And I just want to be very clear about that. And I bet if you ask Donald Trump what his second term agenda is, he would just go on about Hunter Biden and the Biden family is corrupt. But what is really, really bothering me as I started to put two and two together, I alluded to it yesterday, but I didn't have nearly as much information on the story yesterday as I did today because it has been thoroughly vetted and covered by larger media outlets. Like they just put all of the details of the story out there. And then there was this very unusual, I don't want to call it a press conference. The director of national intelligence, Radcliffe, gives a speech or like he read a press release, and it was so odd and it looked weird. And I think Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, I think he spoke, but the attorney general was nowhere in sight. So please keep that in mind. And it wasn't a press conference because they didn't take any questions. They were reading these prepared statements talking about these emails that were received. And this is what I alluded to yesterday, these emails that were received apparently from the Proud Boys, right? The email address, info@theproudboys.com. So it was their domain name that sent the emails, and it was threatening. And I'm going to read the letter verbatim in a second, but it was sent to Democratic voters that are registered as Democrats because it apparently seems that the Proud Boys have obtained lists of registered Democrats and are using those lists to send emails to people to not only tell them to vote for Donald Trump, but to physically change their party registration. In Wisconsin, you don't have to register with a political party. We have open elections, essentially open primaries, where if I want to vote in a Democratic primary, I don't have to register to be a Democrat, to vote in a Democratic primary. But in other states, you actually physically have to register as a member of a political party. Whenever you hear somebody say, I'm a card-carrying Democrat, that means that they literally registered with that party so they can vote in that party's primary election. In Wisconsin, we don't have to do that. But in these states where you have to register, your party affiliation apparently can be exposed. And this email that's coming from the Proud Boys, that's where the domain name is from on the emails that are being sent. It says you have to not only vote for Donald Trump, but you have to change your party affiliation from Democrat to Republican. And there's another series of threats of what they're going to do, or they're going to do something. They're going to come and find you if you don't do these two things, if you don't vote for Donald Trump and if you don't change your party registration to Republican. That's like really big stuff. Like this, hits all of the marks of, voter intimidation, and all sorts of federal laws are broken by just sending this kind of email. So then there's this, I can't call it a press conference, a reading of a press release by the director of national intelligence talking about foreign influence in this election. They didn't allude to the Proud Boys letter specifically, but they did mention two countries. They mentioned Russia, but when they mentioned Russia in this reading of a press release yesterday, which is something that federal investigators don't give press conferences about something they're investigating. We all know that. But if there's a time for things to just break the norms and break tradition and be immoral and unethical, now is the time to do it. So essentially, they're talking about these foreign actors that are going to be influencing our elections. Russia was mentioned as an afterthought, but then we hear the mention of Iran. Iran is going to be interfering, and there's some evidence. They didn't allude to the letter that I'm going to read in a second, but they want to promote to the American people that it's the Iranians that are behind the emails intimidating Democrats and Democratic voters and registered Democrats. They want people to think it's the Iranians that are behind that, even though the domain name says Proud Boys. But it gets a little bit more interesting than that. I want to say good morning to everybody on the YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please. The Forum 2, youtube.com/theforum2com, or if you go to YouTube and search the Forum 2, you can subscribe to our channel. Vanessa Garrett, good morning to you. Latasha Fields, good to see you, Tasha. Tutu Reeves, good morning. Gail Williams, good morning, all. Nice intro music, Sherwin. Yeah, I try to change it up a little bit because I get tired of hearing the same music. Loretta Cunningham says, good morning. Sandy J, good morning. Denise Jones, good morning. Diana Beckham, morning. Sherwin, morning, Diana. Cyber trainer Judy B. Donald Trump's agenda is about him, sure, but I also believe his agenda is to keep and uphold white wealth, corporate supremacy, and suppress low income people of color. Oh, that's not just Donald Trump doing that, Judy. That's like 25% of America, Democrat, Republican. They're still gonna do their best to maintain their status and their way of life that they have become accustomed. But yeah, Donald Trump will do some of that, but only to the extent it helps him. Alden Higgins, good morning to you as well. So I want to read this letter because here's what I think is happening. I could be wrong. I'm not wrong. I could be. I'm not. When Donald Trump told, because remember he's very telepathic, and that's why I said on yesterday's program, in the event that Donald Trump loses the election, a lot of national security secrets that previous presidents have held tightly, they've never exposed. Donald Trump will still try to upend America and American democracy even after he loses. So things that previous presidents have respected about the national security of the United States by not exposing things they've done, exposing things they've heard, especially when that information is exposed to foreign powers, Donald Trump is going to let loose everything because he's going to be very mad at all of us because we didn't send him back, because we didn't elect him. And so he doesn't want Joe Biden to be successful. He already said early on, he didn't say specifically there wouldn't be a peaceful transition of power, but he never really admitted that that is what he would be promoting. Right? So keep all of this in mind. He's very petty. He's very vindictive. He's also very telepathic. Trump will give you hints because when he speaks off the cuff, that's why they need Trump to be scripted. Because if Trump isn't scripted, he'll say anything. And when you allow people to say anything, they eventually are going to reveal their true mind every single time. I promise you. Let somebody speak extemporaneously, and you're going to know who they really are in a very short period of time. Trump is like that. So when he told the Proud Boys to stand back and to stand by, and what did they do? They ejaculated all over themselves. Like, oh my God, the president really recognized us. It's not what we initially thought, that the Proud Boys are going to have a bunch of guns at a bunch of polling locations. I don't think that's going to happen because even when we had our conversation with City of Milwaukee Election Commission Chair Stephanie Finley, she's like, oh, no, if there's any voter intimidation that you all see, even now, the police are going to be on high alert for that. In Michigan, as an example, they have outlawed open carry of firearms in the vicinity of polling places just to mitigate the possibility that there will be armed militias at polling locations. That's not going to happen. I'm going to tell you why that's not going to happen, because where Democratic turnout is going to be highest. Because if you intimidate voters in the wrong districts, you're going to scare away Trump voters. So you can't just bring polling guns to polling locations ad hoc. Where Democratic turnout is going to be the highest is going to be in Black communities, Black and brown communities, but certainly in Black communities. If you see a 7-hour wait time at a polling location in Georgia, it's Black people. Proud Boys ain't showing up to that. They're not going to Black neighborhoods with their guns. Why? Well, come on. We'll leave them right where we find them. They're not coming to our neighborhoods. And so that might be a bit far. Look, this is America in 2020. Really, anything is possible. But it's highly unlikely that they will try to intimidate voters with guns. What they will try and do is intimidate voters with things like this. Now, remember, they said that this email originated from either an Iranian or a Saudi Arabian server. So they're trying to blame these emails that are from the Proud Boys domain, okay, intimidating Democratic voters, trying to blame it on Iran. First and foremost, and the emails obviously are to help promote Donald Trump, to scare Democratic voters and register Democrats from voting for Joe Biden, okay? Iran wouldn't be involved in an operation that promotes Donald Trump, because the Iran nuclear deal that was reasonably fair for us and for Iran, that gave $450 billion of Iran's money back, Donald Trump overturned that. So if anything, Iran would have a vested interest in wanting to hurt the Donald Trump campaign. Here is what's happening. The Proud Boys, who have been told to stand back and stand by, are not going to use weapons at polling locations to intimidate voters. They're going to use cyber threats. And when they use these cyber threats, follow me, guys, I'm going somewhere, and I'm going to need y'all to pay attention to this because our whole democracy is on the line here. When we see these threats coming from whomever, targeting individual people, targeting Democratic voters, the United States government, which is owned, operated, and thoroughly controlled by Donald Trump, they're going to blame foreign actors when it's domestic terrorists here. Because if we're told that, no, this wasn't the Proud Boys, this was Iran, but we need the American people to believe it's these foreign actors who are trying to influence our election, because Americans have some familiarity with foreign actors influencing our election because we haven't stopped talking about Russia from 2016. So what's going to happen is the Proud Boys are going to be able to use the same intimidation tactics, and with the protection of the federal government is going to blame another country. This is coming from us here in the United States, from domestic terror organizations, and they're going to do more, and they're going to intimidate more voters. They're probably going to expose some people's information online. They're going to sell information on the dark web. They're going to expose people's information. And the United States government, the federal government headed up by Donald Trump, is going to say, nope, that's Iran doing that. That's why we need to go after Iran. This is called a false flag. Donald Trump is going to give cover to domestic terror organizations that influence the election in his favor because he's broke. He doesn't have a message. He's losing in every single poll. And if he doesn't get reelected, he's probably going to go to prison. None of this is far-fetched. In fact, it's so painfully obvious. I hope other media outlets pick up on this so the American people can be much more vigilant. Now, at the same time, if you receive threats, you should report those to the FBI immediately. But if we start to see more of them, and maybe if this information is exposed, they won't continue down this path of intimidating voters, because the federal government is just going to blame another country. Even though Donald Trump said during the debate, Proud Boys, hey, we're going to need you. Just hang on. We'll figure something out. It's a total false flag. And the United States government has used false flags successfully and unsuccessfully since the founding of the nation. But then what they often worry about is this thing called blowback. The blowback is when the Proud Boys are sending, or whatever domestic terrorist organization that's helping Donald Trump, in which Donald Trump is going to use the power of the federal government to protect them, when the American people find out about the entire operation, the blowback is how we revolt. When we find out that the Trump organization and the campaign and the federal government and the director of national intelligence are all in cahoots to blame foreign countries on domestic terrorism and voter intimidation that's happening right here in this country. When we, the democracy, the American people, find out and we have a fit, that's called blowback. Blowback is what they're worried about. Blowback is what we need right now. So let me read Tammy Reed, good morning. Lemon Harris, good morning. Osage one, get out of here, Lemon. Glad you're here. Lisa Miller, good morning. Ronald Gergen, good morning as well. So what do we got here? From the Associated Press, yes. Emails threatening Florida voters to, quote, vote Trump or else, linked to overseas servers. And I'm going to explain that too, because in this article and then in other media reports that you may see about this voter intimidation, that is these cyber threats that are coming to people's emails, they're going to mention a number of foreign servers. The servers are in Saudi Arabia, or maybe the servers are traced to Iran. That's all bullshit. You can get this thing called a virtual private network, like $3 a month, $30 a year, where you can put your computer in any country on the planet. Right? If you're in the United States and you don't want your email to look like it came from the United States, you can get a $3 VPN, click the country in which you want your computer to be simulated to be in, Iran, Saudi Arabia, China, Russia, And you can send all the emails you want. And so when they do a trace of where the email came from, when they trace the IP address, it's going to say a foreign country. That's a 7-year-old can do that. And so by them saying, oh, the server is from Saudi Arabia, oh, that's bullshit. Dozens of voters in heavily Democratic counties in Florida and across several states reported receiving emails on Thursday appearing to come from a right-wing group threatening to, quote, come after them unless they vote for President Trump. But an examination of the messages, now under investigation by state and federal authorities, shows they were sent via servers located overseas, raising questions about their origin amid concerns about voter intimidation just 2 weeks before Election Day and early voting that began in Florida on Monday. Democratic voters in Alachua County, Florida, began receiving the email Tuesday morning, and voters in Alaska and Arizona also reported receiving the message. It appeared to come from the right-wing group, the Proud Boys, and showed a from address of info@officialproudboys.com. The Proud Boys has been designated a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is a civil rights advocacy group. Quote, vote Trump or else, the email's subject line proclaimed. And the letter goes on to read. So these are the emails that were sent to people in Florida, Alaska, Arizona, and other Democratic leaning counties. Quote, we are in possession of all of your information, email, address, phone, everything, the message stated. You are currently registered as a Democrat, and we know this because we have gained access into the entire voting infrastructure. You will vote for Trump on Election Day, or we will come after you. Change your party affiliation to Republican to let us know you received our message, and we'll comply. We will know which candidate you voted for. I would take this seriously if I were you. While at first glance, the email seems to come from an account under a domain of a website affiliated with the Proud Boys, a review of the source code embedded in 7 emails shows the message originated from IP addresses linked to servers located in Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Estonia. First of all, there's no link to Iran at all. So they just came up with Iran arbitrarily. But it's also to take the attention and take the focus off of Russia. Russia is still, we've known this, guys. Russia has not stopped their series of disinformation campaigns and tactics and all sorts of evil activities to help influence the election for Donald Trump because Trump has been so very nice to them. And if you blame another nation like Iran, then people will lose their focus on Russia, who has not stopped since 2016 because we have not put in the safeguards and the measures to prevent Russia from continuing what they were doing in 2016. And whatever it was they were doing in 2016, whether it was fake email accounts, fake Twitter accounts, fake Facebook groups, and all the trolling they were doing, that was 4 years ago. You guys know how quickly technology moves. Whatever they were doing 4 years ago, and we couldn't catch them then. They're way more sophisticated now. So they have 4 years of advanced technology on how you can defeat the weak systems here in America to influence the American people. This entire thing is being orchestrated by Donald Trump and not him specifically, but those that also will go to jail if he does not get reelected, to allow as many voter intimidation tactics as they can possibly get, because on paper, Donald Trump is losing this election. He's losing it really, really bad. Talked to one of my political consultant friends that I've worked with for many years. Democrats are poised to take the U.S. Senate. They are poised to make a serious run at the majority in the Wisconsin State Assembly, where the districts are so gerrymandered, it's nearly impossible for Democrats to get a majority. But the overwhelming amount of support that Democratic candidates are going to get, Democrats that weren't even supposed to win assembly seats are now probably going to win assembly seats. Trump can't win in that environment because of the Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. All of those other Democrats who appear on that ballot, depending upon what district you live in, those other Democrats that are running for local offices, they're going to get votes too. Wisconsin State Senator Alberta Darling, who has just been a fixture in Republican politics in this state for better than 2 decades, she might lose. This is a very unflattering and unfriendly environment for Donald Trump. And don't forget, he's broke. I'm going to talk about that as well, how they squandered all of the campaign cash on lifestyles of the rich and famous and all sorts of other, hang on a second, guys, nonsense, wasting money. So no, we're in for an interesting ride here, guys. Karen Siegler, good morning to you. Glad you could join us. But just be mindful that voter intimidation is going to happen digitally. I think we were just waiting for people to show up at our polling locations with guns. Like, that's stupid. Like, that's a very surefire way to get arrested, because that's obvious voter intimidation. Now, there's going to be poll watchers and there's going to be volunteers on both sides, both Democrats. There's good people on both sides. Democrats and Republicans are going to have people watching the polls, and you know what? You should. We had that even in our April election, our presidential primary, and there was some, hints at voter intimidation there. There was one guy who was at the a Washington high school voting location that had probably a quarter-mile line for people to vote in our April presidential primary, and he was wearing like a lab coat, and it was just really, he was just sitting in a chair. It was really weird. So there's going to be some of that, but it's not going to be, an armed militia with guns, because if they want to try to intimidate the most Democratic of voters, they would have to go in Black neighborhoods. I mean, one thing that I'm sure you all know about African Americans, because you always complain about, the violence in Black communities and so many shootings and Black on Black crime. Well, Black people, because we live in America, we have a lot of guns, like a lot. And then we hear about the unfortunate accidents. Sometimes the parents are careless with a firearm, and then a 2-year-old gets shot. And that's not just in Black homes. That's just all across America. Because if you have a firearm in your home, all of the negative outcomes of having a gun go up higher than the actual possibility of you stopping an intruder from breaking in your home. Because a lot of pro-gun people say, well, I have a gun in every room in my house and a whole basement full of ammunition, because somebody might break in here and steal things that are of no value whatsoever, but that's why I have guns. You're more likely to have your children get that gun, hurt themselves, shoot themselves, bring that gun to school. You're much more likely to be shot by your spouse or to shoot your spouse, and suicide for everybody in that home goes up exponentially just because the gun is in that home. Just so we're clear on guns. It's not just to stop the bad guys. It's what kills a lot of Americans. And so that being said, there's a lot of guns in the African American community, and you'd just be a plumb fool to think that you could come into the Black community. And I don't even know how many people you would need. How many, if you want to intimidate Black voters, what kind of militia would you need per polling location? You need like 900 people. Like, that's a pretty sizable army. Anyways, they aren't going to do that, because that's going to be very inefficient. It also would strengthen people's resolves, because if we knew, let's say we found out that there was an armed militia in Chicago, terrible place for the Proud Boys to be. But let's say an armed militia, we found out at an early voting location, was intimidating voters in Chicago. Do you know what that would do for the sentiment of people just in Wisconsin or in Michigan or in Pennsylvania? If we knew and we saw instances and evidence of armed people showing up to intimidate voters, that would encourage more people to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But they will use the cyber threats, because that, it has been established, that is where America is weakest. And that was communicated far and wide in 2016, because we saw all of the disinformation that existed in 2016 initiated by Russia. And we didn't do anything about it. We talked about it. Congress put together a series of bills and allocated additional funding for election protection, but Mitch McConnell didn't allow these bills to get passed through the US Senate. And so now it's a free-for-all. Because if you don't have policy and public support and sentiment, and if you don't have more Americans believing in your vision for the future, then you have to cheat. The Democrats don't have to resort to all of these illegal, immoral, unethical tactics. They don't have to upend the democracy and cheat the US people out of a fair election to win. Democrats can just promote a message, and that resonates with voters. And the standard is so low now that all Democrats have to do is say, well, this is what we want to do for the next 4 years, and just list a couple of priorities. Now, it's not going to dot every I and cross every T for every single person, for every single voter, but it's a lot more than what the Trump administration and the Trump campaign is doing. So the standard for what Democrats even have to do is low. That's how bad it is. That's how much people hate Donald Trump. It's so bad that I believe he faked having the coronavirus so that the media would be consumed with him and he would get a level of sympathy. Because I know that he's the kind of person, the type of narcissist that will ask, I guess the only one that probably still talks to him is Ivanka. He probably says to his daughter while he's touching her inappropriately, Ivanka, how come people don't like me? I've been so good to America. Why don't they like me? Why are they so mean to your father? He's that kind of person. Something else I want you to notice about how deep the hatred is for him. Married couples, they disagree, right? Those of you that are married, I'm sure you've disagreed with your spouse a time or two. Maybe your spouse wants lasagna, maybe you want spaghetti, and you have a disagreement, right? But ultimately, when it comes down to it, married couples work together when the tough stuff is in front of them, right? That's the whole point of the union, to have somebody with you when times get rough. And I'm sure that there have been arguments between presidents and first ladies. I'd imagine that Hillary Clinton, after she gets a couple of glasses of Chardonnay in her and gets real full on that Chardonnay, she brings up Monica Lewinsky just because. Oh, Hillary, why you keep bringing that up? That was almost a quarter century ago. But here's something that I have never witnessed, and I don't know if it's ever happened before, at least not in modern presidential politics. The first lady is out campaigning for their husband. Even if they're mad at them, even if they're arguing, even if they're disagreeing, first ladies are very valuable on the campaign trail for convincing people to vote for their husbands. Donald Trump has, I wouldn't say completely lost, suburban housewives, he calls them. But if Melania was on the campaign trail, she could make a much better case to suburban women than Donald Trump could. Because remember what Donald Trump likes to grab because he's famous. Don't ever forget that, by the way. Melania Trump is not campaigning for her husband. Even if she doesn't want him to win, you can't have the appearance that your wife is not campaigning for you. And I want you to remember, pay attention to what they are not doing and what they do not say. The fact that Melania is not doing campaign visits, she's not having, small group meetings with Republican women's groups. She's not doing any of that. She is just completely sick of him, and it's embarrassing for him because there are people like us that pick up on that. That Melania Trump isn't even supporting her husband, because if she's not supporting him, and this is what it comes down to, if she's not supporting him, why should any of you? And if you're supporting Donald Trump and his wife is not, then what is it with you? Another issue that the Trump organization is having, they're having money troubles. Whenever Democrats have a contested election with a Republican, money is always a problem, because what I know about the left, and I've worked with them and worked for them, I've been on radio in which I have talked to them, they don't invest their money at the same rate that Republicans do in political causes and political candidates. They just don't. Bernie Sanders was able to amass a large network of donors because he was promoting policy ideas that helped young people that were facing a real dire future. But even Bernie Sanders, with the amount of money he was able to raise, he only did it $27 at a time. he got a bunch of low dollar donors. Republicans don't really do the low dollar donor thing. They do high dollar donors because you need less of them. But Democrats don't give, and Democrats didn't really support progressive leaning Democratic talk radio. We just don't spend our money on that stuff. People think that because Democrats have history on their side, and now more than ever, because if you're a Democrat and you align with Democratic philosophies, you're more moral than an evangelical, even though some Democrats are atheists. The principles that you believe in for fairness and lifting up the poor and helping everybody and being a decent, honorable human being is more biblical than a Bible thumper is. And because of that, because of this sense of policy morality, Democrats don't give their money. And I never buy the excuse of, well, Democrats, they don't have any money. That's a lie. Democrats are just as rich as Republicans are. Well, the Democrats can't give money because they don't have it. Yes, they do. Democrats have very nice things. They buy very, very expensive things. But they don't give money. And so when you're a Democrat running against a Republican, regardless of what race or what contest it is, you're going to get, in most cases, or you should expect to get out fundraised by your Republican opponents. Presidential contests, that's almost always the case. There's always a fundraising disadvantage for the Democrat, but not in this case. This is from theweek.com. President Trump's sprawling political operation has raised over $1 billion since he took the White House in 2017 and set a lot of it on fire, the Associated Press reports. Late Tuesday, the Trump campaign said it earned in the final month of the campaign. It entered, rather, the final month of the campaign with just $63 million in the bank, far less than $177 million war chest of Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden. So and of course they're burning through money very quickly, because now is where your money turns into actual campaign resources. It's advertising. I can't tell you how many direct mail pieces I've received. I've gotten so many pieces of mail. Pictures of Joe Biden on one side, Kamala Harris on the other side, pictures of random Black people enjoying life. It almost looks like a Newport commercial, like a Newport ad, but with Black people in it, like enjoying, like throwing around a beach ball, like vote for Joe Biden, vote. So they're spending a lot of money. But in the last 2 months, the Biden campaign has raised almost $1 billion, probably $780 million. This is just in the last 2 months. And this is good because it's expensive outreaching to voters, and it's getting more and more expensive. Joe Biden has really only been raising money as a presidential candidate since probably May of 2019. Donald Trump registered his reelection committee on his inauguration day in 2017 because it made news, and it had never been done before. Usually, presidents wait. First-term presidents may wait till the midterm election, or they'll wait at least a year before they create their reelection campaign committee. Donald Trump created his reelection campaign committee so they could raise money for his reelection in 2020 on January 20th, 2017, because he knew then that he needed to serve 2 terms because the statute of limitations would run out on all of the crimes that he committed leading up to the presidential election of 2016. And I'm not blowing smoke here, guys. There's no other reason for it. Like, dude, you get inaugurated on that day and you're already thinking about re-election when you haven't even put pen to paper yet as first day as president of the United States. So all this stuff has been contrived. But here's the other thing. Because Donald Trump got such an incredible head start on fundraising, why does he only have $63 million left right now when he needs it? The whole point of starting your campaign committee the day you're inaugurated as president, so you have more time than any of your Democratic challengers or would-be Democratic challengers to raise money, but he spent it all. Trump and his shared committees with Republican National Committee, which jointly raised $1.5 billion since the start of 2019, entered October with $251 million on hand versus $432 million for Biden and his joint committees with the Democrats' National Committee, the New York Times reported. What happened to Donald Trump's once massive cash advantage over Biden? And so this article is going to tell you one thing. I'm going to tell you another of where I think that money went. Quote, they spent their money on unnecessary overhead, lifestyles of the rich and famous, activities by the campaign staff, and vanity ads like a $10 million Super Bowl commercial. That was stupid. and $1.6 million in the deep blue Washington, D.C. media market, anti-Trump veteran GOP consultant Mike Murphy told the Associated Press. You could literally have 10 monkeys with flamethrowers go after the money, and they wouldn't have burned through it as stupidly as the Trump campaign. The Trump campaign spent significantly more to raise money over the summer than the Biden campaign, and raised significantly less money than Biden. Other questionable expenditures include $100,000 on President Trump Jr.'s book, $39 million in legal and compliance fees, and at least $218,000 for Trump surrogates to travel on private jets provided by campaign donors, the Associated Press notes. Also, since 2017, when the campaign committee was first formed, more than $39 million has been paid to firms controlled by Brad Parscale, who was ousted as campaign manager over the summer. An additional $319,400,000 was paid to American-made media consultants, a Delaware limited liability company whose owners are not publicly disclosed. So before I go on in the article, I'm going to tell you what's really happening here. Donald Trump is surrounded by people that absolutely hate him, but they know that they can get a lot of money from him. They don't want him to be president. They think he was the worst thing that's ever happened to this country since slavery, because he is. But they get chosen to work for him because they're probably very good at their craft, and maybe they're the best in the business. And there's different types of consultants. Consultants are usually quantified by Democrat versus Republican, because Democratic consultants will never work on Republican campaigns. Vice versa, Republican consultants will never help Democrats. So he got a list of who the best Republican consultants were. We're talking about consultants that worked for Reagan and were Reagan-type Republicans, or worked for George W. Bush or H.W. Bush, that have a deeper understanding of what it means to be a Republican. Donald Trump has slashed and burned all of that. And so these people are tapped to help the Trump campaign because Trump's a Republican and they're Republican consultants. And what these consultants are doing is they're saying, okay, I'll work for Trump. I don't want to work for him, but money is money. We're going to rip his ass off. We're going to charge him a premium called battle pay. When you have a particularly difficult candidate, charge them more. It's more stress. It's more labor. Some candidates are so bad, you get PTSD by working on their goddamn campaigns. They are ripping Donald Trump off. They're telling him that, oh, well, Mr. President, we're going to do a media buy for you. We're going to design the commercials. We're going to do all the creative. We're going to do all the digital ads for you. And let's say the cost to do these ads, I'm just giving you examples and round numbers, is $100,000. It's only $100,000. Because Trump is so inexperienced, and so are the people in his orbit. Because remember, the people in his orbit are non-political. They don't know about this stuff. Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, they don't know how much it actually costs to do campaign work and political work and design mail and design digital ads. They've got no clue. So when this experienced Republican consultant, remember, that hates Donald Trump, gets hired, and they say, well, Mr. Trump, it's going to cost you $3.7 million per day. And Trump is like, all right, I guess that's how much it costs. You're the best, right? Oh, yes, Mr. President, we have helped Ronald Reagan, and we helped George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush, and we have helped Republicans and Bob Dole as well. We're very experienced Republican consultants. Now, they secretly hate him, but they're taking his money. To go through $1.5 billion and to go into the last 2 weeks of the campaign essentially broke means he has been getting ripped off. And to that, I say, good, you American patriots, you. Oh, you guys are commenting. Tammy Reed, definitely curious to hear the bit about him being broke. Folks always want to mention how he donates his presidential paycheck. Probably uses it to pay off Stormy Daniels. Who knows what he does with that check? Eileen Seeger, good morning. My husband and I never fight, but for this election season on Sunday, we decided not to further discuss politics until after the election results are finalized. It's very quiet in the house. Oh, Eileen. Just hang on a second, guys. You're married to a Trump supporter? Love must be strong. Love is strong, because I'm not married. I date a little bit, mostly a headache, mostly a waste of time, but whatever. got a deal breaker. You know what my deal breaker is? I'm usually pretty open. People have, especially if you're our age, my age. You've lived life and you've got your experiences, and everybody has a past and has a history. Totally cool. Whatever. I ain't gonna judge you for stuff you did before we met, because quite honestly, I don't care. But if you're a Trump supporter, it's a deal breaker. And there's a lot of Trump supporter women that are out there. But if when you married the person, there was no Donald Trump yet, well, Tammy Reed says, wow, Eileen, that's got to be tough. Tammy Reed, I wish they would stop with the direct mail campaigns. What a waste. Yeah, I mean, for those of us that are already convinced of who we're going to vote for, but they get these big, gigantic lists of names and addresses, and it takes a certain amount of voter contact to right where you're just starting to get the voter to pay attention. And it's a lot. And also keep this in mind. There's no door knocking where 4 years ago and 8 years ago and 12 years ago, people were knocking on your door. Hey, I'm with so-and-so campaign, vote for so-and-so. And they would give you a piece of literature. But because of the Rona, there isn't any door knocking. And so the voter outreach that they would have done, those additional voter contacts they would have done at the door, aren't taking place. So you're going to see more ads. You're going to see more digital ads when you go and play your videos on YouTube, and you're going to get more direct mail because they have to contact voters a certain amount of times. It's just like if you see a Coca-Cola commercial enough times, eventually one day you're going to say, I think I want a Coca-Cola. Same principles with psychology and advertising. Rote rehearsal. If you keep repeating something over and over and over again, people are just bound to believe it. Good morning, Douglas Dickerson. Glad you're here with us. Eileen Seeger, I think he drank the poisonous Kool-Aid. That's too bad. Maybe he can be reformed, Why don't you bring him in here with us one day, Eileen, and anybody else? If you have a Trump person, why don't, maybe not. We've done a very good job of scrubbing the Facebook group of Trump people. And the Facebook group that I started in 2012. And it actually was somebody else's. And Facebook groups weren't in 2012. I mean, they existed, but they weren't in 2012 what they are now. And they're like, oh, Sherwin, here, I don't want it. I was like, you sure? And it had 100 people in it at the time. That was a good start. And I just took it over. And so in that amount of time where it just grew, there were a lot of Republicans and what I would come to find out would be Trump supporters that also infiltrated the group. And because I want people who see the world like we do, like normal, rational, ethical, moral human beings that want everyone to have opportunities, people that are anti-racism, people that believe the heavy-handed tactics of the police need to be stopped, the cops need to wear body cams, that we need to invest in children and people and in programs and not more prisons. I want people that have that philosophy to be able to discuss amongst themselves without interruption and argument from people that thoroughly disagree with being on the right side of history. Because it's when the right side of history debates amongst itself, do the real solutions come. And the amount of elected officials and policymakers that are a part of our group, they get a lot of inspiration for some of the things because they tell me, because this is where the important pieces of the democracy come together to discuss. And so it needed to be scrubbed of Trump supporters. And also there were a lot of trolls, especially in 2016, that were just infiltrating a lot of different Facebook groups, but it wasn't just pro Donald Trump trolls. You know that there was a lot of the Russian operation in 2016 was very sophisticated in that it pretended to be Bernie Sanders supporters as well. And it kept reiterating to people on social media, Bernie Sanders got screwed by the party. So if you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, you better not support Hillary Clinton. In fact, some of those Bernie Sanders supporters ate that messaging up so well that they either didn't vote, or some of them, we know for an absolute fact, voted for Donald Trump as a pushback on Hillary Clinton because they believe that the DNC screwed Bernie Sanders. Let me be abundantly clear. The DNC did screw Bernie Sanders. Why did the DNC screw Bernie Sanders? Because you cannot be a Democratic socialist. You can't be a member of essentially a different political party and get the Democratic nomination. Don't work like that, boo-boo. Somebody should have told you, Bernie. Somebody should have told you to call me. I'd have told you that from the beginning. You can't be anything but a Democrat and expect to get the Democratic nomination. That's a no-brainer. I don't care how much momentum you have and how many young people you can get engaged. And let's be clear about this as well. Young people will go to an event, they'll go to a rally, they'll tweet their asses off, but they don't vote. Prove me wrong. Now, we hope they vote now, but if they voted in numbers that were reflective of their participation, either online or in Bernie Sanders rallies and events, then Bernie Sanders would have landslid the nomination. But the Democratic Party has no interest in putting itself out of business. It's the only political party that we have. And when I say it's the only one that we have, the Republicans, they don't exist. They're going to have a lot of trouble trying to redefine themselves. And while they're redefining who they are they Trump? Are they not Trump? Do they hate Trump? Are they going to be apologists for Trump? It's going to take them a while to sort out who they are. And they're going to argue. They're going to set each other on fire. They're going to get into fights. And the Democrats are going to go full steam ahead and putting together policy solutions. And this is what is going to solidify Democrats winning elections in this country for a very, very long time. Even if you don't like the Democrats, they are going to get to work on helping to improve the country, the economy, and mitigating the virus. Republicans are going to hate each other for a while because it's your fault. No, it's your fault. You're supporting Trump. Well, I only supported Trump because you did. It's going to be funny, but they brought it on themselves, and there's zero sympathy coming from you here. None. You're all adults, and you knew this was going to happen. You knew it couldn't last. Trumpism had a shelf life. It's about to expire, I hope, on November 3rd. So I haven't voted yet, and I totally need to. I'm going to vote. But for a long time, you guys heard me. Don't vote by mail. Blah, 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 blah. I'm going to vote in person on election day. I was talking to a friend last night. I think the line, maybe not here in Milwaukee. That's why having the early voting that we have, and we only have 2 weeks of it. That was Scott Walker that did that. We used to have early vote for a full month before the election. Our elections in Milwaukee were such a free-for-all. Nobody remembers this. We had early voting like the weeks up to the election, we had it 7 days a week because we did this thing called Souls to the Polls, where polling locations or City Hall. We didn't have scattered sites around the city. That only came about because Scott Walker limited us to only 45 hours of early voting prior to any election. Before that, it was if you had the staff and the resources to open your polling locations 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and run them 7 days a week before the election, you could do it. Problem is, little Rudy Poot, tiny little small redneck Republican town didn't have the staff to be able to have their elections and early vote for a full month. And Scott Walker said, that's not fair. Rudy Poot can't have their elections for a full month, but Milwaukee can. Not fair. So we're going to limit everybody to just 2 weeks. And so when we got limited by state law so we can only have 45 hours of early vote before any election, Milwaukee said, okay, we'll take your 45 hours, but we're going to open up 170 goddamn sites. Well, not that many. We greatly expanded where you can early vote because before you only could vote at the election commission at City Hall. And the first year we did that was in the presidential election of 2004. And I remember seeing, because the election commission, it used to be on the 5th floor. Is it on the 5th? Yeah, it's on the 5th floor, right? Where's the election commission at in City Hall? It's been so long. I used to work there and I don't even remember. It was the 5th floor. And the lines were wrapping around all of the floors in City Hall, because people were going to the election commission, the office, to cast their early votes. So what really needs to happen when Democrats get control here of state government is the law that prevents only 45 hours of early voting, which was signed by Scott Walker, that needs to be reversed so we can go back to having a full month of early voting. Now, if you've got a small town that doesn't have the taxes to offer early voting for your residents and your constituents, that's not our problem. See, Republicans like to cut taxes. Democrats know that it takes investment to run a society. Republicans think that they can run a society on, I don't know, margarine. I don't know. They cut taxes. There's no money to pay for anything. It also explains why in Republican-led states, the coronavirus is not just in higher numbers, it's killing more people. It's killing more people. If you live in a red state, your chances of dying by the coronavirus is on par with being black. It is. I said that Donald Trump was going to niggerize these white people, and my goodness. We're over here looking at the white folks, the Trump supporters, the poor white people that are supporting Trump, like, oof, y'all need your own civil rights movement. It's, oof. If you want to cut taxes because you run for re-election on cutting taxes, but then you aren't able to compete with a city like Milwaukee, that even though we need probably more tax revenue because the whole the coronavirus has shuttered so many things of people being out of work and not paying their property taxes, government revenues have gone down, but we still have the agencies and the resources to offer more services than small towns do. And if small towns that may have lower taxes and lower property tax rates, if that makes those people happy and comfortable, fair enough. But then you don't get to enjoy expanded democracy like we do here in this city. Dorian Higgins says, I can see that. He's a total buffoon. Tammy Reed says, same deal breaker. Douglas Dickerson, I'm married to a Packer fan. Douglas Dickerson, congratulations. Does she have a sister? Packers got beat real bad by Tampa Bay. They got beat real bad. That's okay, though. You got to take that butt whooping every now and again, and then you're better and stronger the next week. Sarah Laguerre, quote, normal, ethical, moral human beings. Yes. Kristen Cervase, if I'm saying that right. Should I stop saying people's last names? Well, I guess it doesn't matter. Your last name is on the YouTube. I don't want the Proud Boys to come after you. Trump supporters need not apply is in every dating app and social media I'm on. Yeah, you kind of have to make that known because you can't agree with them. Like, I saw a bunch of really creative memes, and I think the meme game in America right now is on 10 because people have a lot of time to be creative. And I saw one that says it's like about, somebody's a Republican, somebody's a Democrat, somebody's a Trump supporter, somebody's a Biden supporter. And it's a Republican, I think, that might have come up with this. And they just got bashed. Well, you like Biden and I like Trump. Can't we just agree to disagree? And the whole theme was you agree to disagree on like pizza toppings. Like, I want my half sausage. I want my half pepperoni. Cool. Agree to disagree. I don't like sausage. You don't like pepperoni. Cool. You can't agree to disagree on racism. Kind of like an all or nothing. Like, you can't. Well, Trump's a racist, but nobody's perfect. Oh, Kristen Survey, so it's pronounced survey. Oh, that's probably French. My French is terrible. What else we got here? Now, the Proud Boys respond and say, Proud Boys say they are not responsible for email threats to Florida Democratic voters. First of all, of course, they're going to say that. But when the director of national intelligence reads a press release yesterday, which is something that they never do, if they are investigating foreign influence in an election or any investigation that involves a foreign government, that is high-level national security stuff. And what you never do is you never tell the foreign government, you never give a press conference or read something publicly in front of news cameras saying that we're investigating this country, because you're giving that country a head start and an opportunity to cover up their misdeeds or for them to switch direction. If we're investigating somebody, you don't tell the world. You ever wonder why when there's an officer-involved shooting, we can't see the body camera footage for sometimes a year later because those things compromise the investigation? You ever see when there's an officer-involved shooting and the chief gets interviewed and the chief says, well, there's an ongoing investigation, I can't answer that question. Well, due to the ongoing investigation, I don't want to compromise an ongoing investigation. You're very tight-lipped about those things. They don't disclose, well, yep, it was this person and this is what they were wearing and this is what we think the argument was over. No. They don't do that. The United States government, the federal government under the leadership of Donald Trump, is compromising its own quote unquote investigation. Why are they doing that if they think Iran is responsible for the quote unquote Proud Boys email? because Iran is not responsible. In fact, of the locations of the servers that were mentioned of where the emails came from, Iran was not one of them. It was the United Arab Emirates and it was Saudi Arabia. But I just told you how you can emulate that. Get a VPN account. You can make your computer be anywhere in the world so you can have internet privacy. It's a service that is sold to anyone. The email appears to come from the right-wing group Proud Boys, but the group says it wasn't them. Voters who received the email threats told us they will not back down from voting how they choose to vote. A woman we spoke to on Wednesday is angry and wants police to go all out to find the sender. Quote, I think it's frightening to get this kind of letter, but let's put it this way. It doesn't intimidate me to do the right thing for our country, said Kathy, who received an email threat and did not want to share her full name for the story. The sender of the email claims to be a member of the Proud Boys, a group that was brought up during the first presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Oh, and also, guys, the final debate is tonight. I said I was going to do a preview of tonight's debate. You want a preview of tonight's debate? Like, I'm not going to go into some long soliloquy about it. And Joe Biden and Burisma and Hunter Biden, would you shut up, man? There, that's the preview of tonight's debate. So I hope you're able to watch it. I'm going to watch it. And we likely will have a lively discussion about it on tomorrow's program. Also, I haven't interviewed anybody for a while. Next week, I got some pretty big interviews lined up. I would tell you, but I'm not going to tell you yet. But the people that will know who big. The people who are going to get first information about who these big interviews are our Patreons. If you want to be a Patreon, you want to be a supporter of this channel, and thank you to all the people that are. You're helping this channel grow even faster than I would have ever anticipated. That's where you get all the good information. So I'm going to give you guys the link. Right? And then you can sign up and support. We appreciate you so very much. I got to make sure I spelled it right. And I'm going to sign off. And I want you all to have a good day. I want you all to watch the debate so you can participate in the oral reports tomorrow morning on the forum. Have a good day, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.